Place. Oh, the dog is in my place. I can only just fit in this one.
We're here.
It's Sunday. We're in.
We're a little bit late tonight. Evening all.
We're here. Here we go. Let's
open up the bottle. Open up the bottle. We are here.
So it's Sweetie Sunday.
Sweetie Sunday. Good evening. Good evening, Finn.
It's
you like all things sweet.
Late harvest. We're in our sort of shades of yellow. Finn is a shade of yellow.
I am the banana. She is the lime.
Or the mustard.
And he's the vanilla ice cream. Hi, everybody. Good evening.
Good evening.
We're here.
Hi, Bob.
Hi, Bob.
Right, we're just opening our bottle. Now, we realise that it's Sweetie Sunday, and
it's a bit of a weird one, this. Because here we are on Sunday, the Midsummer's Day.
21st of June, indeed.
And we're just about to go into the hottest week of the year. So it's all going to be about rosé. And here we are tasting Sweetie wines.
Well, you know, it's no time like the present.
Exactly. We wouldn't be doing our job if we didn't cover off sweet wines. In fact, we should call them dessert wines.
In fact.
But not pudding wines.
No, dessert wines are beautiful.
Yes.
When we mentioned how about we do something on sweeties or stickies, as they're known in Australia.
Hate that word. It's almost as bad as the B word.
There was some definite thumbs up. So we thought, well, why not? Why not? So has everyone got a little dessert
Evening,
wine?
Mr. Carter. Nice to see you all. Well, we can't see you. You can see us as usual. Keep the questions coming and remember to keep sharing.
Michelle has the goat's cheese and lemon tart ready.
Now that is interesting.
Good job.
Yeah.
So you obviously must have the lovely late harvest Riesling.
Yeah. So for those of you who have just joined us this evening, we are Hannibal Brown Wines. I'm Pam. This is Jude, and This is the lovely Finn. No doubt he's going to have a little sweetie of some sort. Yeah. And this evening is all about dessert wines. But I don't like calling them dessert wines, because it kind of suggests that you should always drink them with desserts.
Indeed.
But we know that's not the case.
No, and certainly the wine that we said that we were going to be tasting this evening is our lovely late harvest Riesling from Chile.
Yeah.
And this is the wine that we do always suggest goes really well with goat's cheese.
Yeah.
As well as your kind of lighter side of the sort of dessert / pudding range.
Yeah.
But certainly these sweeter wines can be fantastic with cheeses.
Yep.
So a really nice accompaniment to your cheese board, and a nice way to keep your meal going.
Yeah.
Whilst not having to stop drinking wine.
Absolutely.
Which is the beauty of it.
So should we talk about them?
Yeah. Well, I think
should we talk about?
First and foremost, what is a sweet wine? At what point does a wine stop becoming dry and start becoming sweet?
Or what is a dry wine?
Or what is a dry wine?
Yeah.
I mean, it really is quantifiable, right?
Yeah.
It's measured in grams per litre.
Yeah.
Oh, there he goes. Right.
There he goes. He's
Finn is actually
now.
sitting in my seat, so I'm just going to
Evening, Suzanne Morgan. Nice to see you.
So glad everyone's able to join us. Actually, just before we carry on, it would be really interesting to know what everyone's drinking, if people have managed to either get the late harvest Riesling or dig out a little dessert wine of their own.
Yeah.
And if you have, what is it?
Yeah, and also because, sweet wines, they kind of split opinion. A lot of people go, oh, no, I don't like sweet wines. I don't like sweet wines. And yet they're the people that love puds often.
How does
Which
that work?
I can't get my head around.
How
if they
does that
love
work?
puddings, why wouldn't you like a sweet wine? It's a weird one.
I think people just been put off in the past by sweet table wine that's just confected wine. And actually it wasn't particularly pleasant, but I think it's all been refined.
Well, and I think that's kind of what we're going to talk about, isn't it? So because there are certain sweet wines that go with certain puddings or cheeses, and others that just don't.
Yeah, so sweet
all
and sweet.
All in the sweet. Doesn't necessarily.
I suppose a bit like saying savoury and dry.
Yeah.
We know from all these weeks of tasting and canapes that not all dry wines go with savoury food.
So on a spectrum 1 to 10, if you had a pudding, a sweet pudding, and you had chocolate at one end, what would be at the other end?
Something like a light vanilla custard or a lemon.
I'm thinking more
cheesecake.
like poached pears or something.
Or
like
poached
that.
pears, yeah, light fruity with a bit of spice
and acidity.
So the range varies massively.
Yeah.
So just a quick check on what people are what people have got in front of them. Yeah, lots
January's
of people
got
got the late harvest.
Clucky. It's like syrup. Oh.
It is. So
because there must be
we have to say, these are meant to be sweet. This is not the sweeter side of a dry table wine, which is why you have it in a dinky little bottle, because you don't need much. And so we've got these lovely little glasses.
So just to give you an idea of how big.
Yeah.
So they really are little dinky things.
Yeah, courtesy actually of my grandma.
Well done, Grandma King.
Well done, Grandma.
Oh, steady on.
Grandma Hughes, actually. She would be, not on the king's side. So this little late harvest Riesling, we're going to be trying along with you. But first of all, dry, if a really, really bone dry wine has 0 to 1 gram of residual sugar.
Yeah.
When we look down the dessert wine end of the scale, what are we looking at?
Well,
and that's per litre, just to put it into perspective.
This is more like 300 grams.
So it's big.
300 grams. So there's an awful lot of sweetness there. But the lovely thing about this particular wine, and why we wanted to talk about this one, is because it's got incredible freshness. And the reason also why it goes with goat's cheese particularly, or indeed any cheese actually, as you all know, because you've all learnt it over the last 3 months, cheese has naturally high acidity. And this is a Riesling grape. And Riesling has naturally high acidity. So it retains its freshness and it sits beautifully with the cheese.
Yeah, so we've actually...
At which point, I'm going to have a little slurp. So important, taste your wine, then taste your cheese or whatever you've got, and then taste your wine again.
Yeah, so go savoury first. So unfortunately, we were unable to get hold of the ideal perfect goat's cheese, but we do have a little Sardinian pecorino, which is a salty, soft, well, hard cheese, but on the softer end of hard. It's not on your Parmesan scale. And I think this should also go really nicely, not as well as goat's cheese. And it's really nice to see that some of you have got goat's cheese there.
But also, very important again, salt, just so as you understand, salt kind of stabilizes, it curbs acidity. So I'm just going to go back to my little drinky here and taste it. So this is quite a salty cheese. And it curbs the acidity, and in actual fact, it lifts the fruit in this. Kind of interesting.
Yes,
doesn't it?
Yeah,
makes it sweeter. Makes it sweeter. But there is some sort of simple rules, I suppose, about exactly.
Sorry about the snorting.
Some rules that you can easily follow. And the one thing that you have to remember is that if you're going to have a sweet wine or a dessert wine with a sweet dessert, a pudding with a pudding, then the wine should really be sweeter than the pudding. If not, the pudding will make the wine acidic. And that's why actually often we all get caught out, having dinner and what have you, and we're probably drinking white wine nicely. And then suddenly somebody comes up and puts a bowl of ice cream in front of you. And if you go back to your Sauvignon Blanc, it tastes bloody awful because it's just like ripping acidity. And that's the wine has to be sweeter than the pudding. Otherwise it just doesn't work. It's kind of interesting. So how about that?
But it's really brilliant to pull out dessert wine when you're having a dinner party. It just follows your glass through to the end of the meal. But we're just going to take it back to basics a little bit here. So
let's go back to basics.
When you think of sweet/dessert wines, you kind of got two categories. You've got fortified and unfortified.
Yes, right? Fortified means fortification, strengthening.
Yeah, exactly. And underfortified is not. So the classic examples of fortified wines would be your ports, your sherries.
So just for those who don't know, a definition of a fortified wine is a wine that has had spirit added to it. So naturally, it might be 7% alcohol, and it has had alcohol added to it to lift it to 17 or 20%. So, for example, Porto, sherry, these are all fortified wines.
Madeira, Marsala,
Malmsey. Sherry.
Yeah. Oh, you Rutherglen. We list a lovely Australian Rutherglen 2-pack.
Yeah.
All fortified. So there is a spirit which is still made from grapes. So this is not a bit of ethanol chucked in. This is brandy or cognac.
Yeah.
Added to
cognac
it.
spirits or brandy spirits. Yeah.
So it's still grape.
Yeah.
But the reason this all came about, the first time fortification really came about was back in like the 17th century. And really, this country has quite a lot to do with it because the wines were being brought over by the merchants from Europe, and they were spoiling a lot of the time. I mean, there were no temperature controls or anything on these boats. And they realized that actually, if you bung a spirit in,
a little bit more spirit,
it kind of preserves it.
Yeah. Yeah. Natural preservative alcohol. It works fantastically.
Brilliant for so many things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's how it all came about way back when. And also those then stronger wines was suited the 17th century British palate, essentially.
Yeah.
Which is why the ports, etc., became so popular.
Yeah.
And then, so you've got all your fortified wines, and then the unfortified. Why are they sweet?
Well, we'll talk about how this wine is made.
Yeah, let's go.
Let's just talk about. Let's use this as an example. So this late harvest. The clue is in the late harvest. It's a 100% Riesling. It's from Casas del Bosque in Casablanca in Chile, just outside Santiago. And the way it's made is basically they leave the grapes on the vine for considerably longer than point of ripeness. So imagine you've got your beautiful grapes on your vine and they're looking lovely and pulp and lush and what have you. They don't pick them. They do not pick them. They leave them and wait and wait and wait.
I've got a good picture whilst you're talking.
Go for it. Until even the climate starts to change, so it gets a little bit more humid, and those grapes eventually start. There you go. They start shriveling. So basically, they had lots and lots of liquid in there. They're losing hydration, and they're literally turning into what look like raisins. And it's at this point that they would discard those green ones that haven't actually turned to raisins. They would discard those ones and pick the raisins as they are, and then start fermenting them. Now, because they've been dehydrated at this point, it's going to take a lot longer to ferment. So the fermentation process takes probably 6 to 8 weeks, and slow. But of course, there's still a huge amount of concentrated natural sugar in those grapes, just not the sort of, the
juice.
Not the juice.
Mm-hmm.
And so the fermentation carries on, and the yeasts keep eating at the sugar and sugar and sugar. But eventually, alcoholic fermentation stops. It just stops naturally at a certain alcoholic point, around about 11-12%. Now, if there's still sugar that hasn't been eaten up by the yeasts, then you have residual sweetness. And that is where the sweet wine comes from. So you've achieved your 12%. In fact, in this case, I think it's quite light. Is it 10.5 or 11%?
Well, it used to be 9.5, but actually this is the 2015 vintage. It's very small. I'll take it for you.
So you've achieved your alcohol. You've got lots and lots of alcohol, but you've still got this natural residual sweetness from the raisins on the vine. And that is where the sugar comes from. And that is how you make a sweet wine.
From a late harvest perspective.
Yeah.
Now you might have heard this. Oh, by the way.
And that is why it's called late harvest, because the harvest, in this country, harvest normally starts around about middle of September, end of September. We're talking about harvests or let's talk about Canada. They might actually not harvest until the following January or February. It's the same in Italy with the sort of the Vinsanto and the Ricciotos. It's considerably a lot longer that those grapes sit on the vine until they've sort of shriveled up and turned into raisins. All right, doggy. And that's what he has to say about that.
When you got an itch, you have to scratch it. So that's the late harvest. So you leave the grapes on the vine for an awful long time until they're really, 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 really ripe.
Yeah.
And then there's the term botrytis.
Yeah.
Has anybody heard of the term botrytis? I mean, this is
Finn, have you
always-
heard of the word botrytis? Get your nose out of that.
It's a bit of my dessert wine, to be frank. What are you doing?
I don't know.
So botrytis is what's also known as noble rot. And it's a similar thing. It's the grapes are left on there until it's basically is a rot.
It is a rot.
It starts to set
the
in,
grapes.
if you like. But it's a good thing.
Yeah.
When you want it to happen.
Yeah.
And again, then the grapes are picked and the wine is produced. And this is, for your late harvest, your navel rot, your ice wine. Again, for the ice wines, people have probably heard of ice wine, which is Canada.
Knock it off.
Is very famous.
It's too much for the dog.
So ice wine is the grapes are left until they're actually freezing on the vine and falling off the sofa. Right, concentrate. This is very serious. We're talking about dessert wines.
Yeah.
So with ice wine, they're again left on until they're actually freezing in the winter, and then the grapes are picked. So it gives a very this sort of style of really fresh wine, often produced by the Riesling grape.
Yeah.
Sometimes Gewürztraminer.
Yeah.
Been taking centre stage for this evening.
Yeah. Well, I suppose this is a good point, actually, ask that the world's most expensive sweet wine, because some of these sweet wines are the most expensive in the whole wine world. And there is one particular one, Jude, that you were talking about earlier on.
Oh, yeah. So it's a starter for 10, because we like our starter for 10.
It's
but
a
first
good
of all,
question.
Before that, we just have to say a couple of hellos, because I've just seen Suzanne pop up, who we see at the horse trials every year. And
Hi,
we haven't
Suzanne.
seen. So hi, Suzanne.
Nice
Welcome.
to see you.
And
Hello,
hi
Nettie.
to Nettie and Penny and Kerry and Steve. Nice to see you all guys joining us. And Sarah, thanks for coming.
Thanks for joining
Sweetie
us.
Sunday.
Yeah, we are myth busting again, with shouting about the virtues of sweet wine.
Yeah. And the starter for 10, we want you guys to guess for us. So dessert wines can reach extortionately high prices. And now there is a sweet wine that holds the Guinness World Record for the highest list price, which is sold at the Ritz, okay? And I want you to guess how, first of all, do you know what the wine might be? But secondly, what do you think the retail price of that wine is?
Yeah.
The nearest to the mark gets a big salute and nod from us.
Yeah.
So put your guesses out there. How much do you think the Guinness World Record for the world's most expensive pudding wine, which was sold on the list at the Ritz, how much do you think that was retailing for that?
Yeah.
And
I defy anybody to manage to find it on the Ritz wine list, but it is there.
well, you won't see it right now. They're not even open. But actually, and guess what the wine is? Someone has already put a suggestion out there.
Okay, let's go for it.
So get your guesses coming in.
85 grand.
I mean, these things go for a vast price, but bear in mind, because of the alcohol levels or the sugar level, they can age for an awful long time. So, you're looking at wines here.
I was trying to find my very, very expensive bottle that I pulled out the other day, and I can't find it.
We didn't drink it, I assure
No,
you.
we didn't.
But as with fortified wines, these wines really do keep for an awful long time. I mean, this late harvest Riesling is only 2015. It tastes as fresh as a daisy.
Yeah.
And will keep for an awful long time. Even opened, you can pop the cork back in and it will still stay good for a while, won't it?
Yeah, because the amount of natural sugar in there is acting as a preservative as well. But also going back to fortified wines, so port, for example. So port is made in exactly the same way as a normal wine. They start the fermentation going, but they stop the fermentation at around about 7 or 8% alcohol. So there's residual sweetness in there, but then they add the spirit alcohol and literally just fortify it. They make it stronger, and that's how it is. And as Jude said earlier on, the reason for that was once upon a time when these wines just wouldn't travel, and it has lasted ever since.
And it turns out that people like more alcohol as well, so everyone's a winner.
So what do we got?
Hi to Suzanne as well, who always comes to the events.
We've got 85,000, which is a good punt, Nettie Peacock, but it's not that. 1,700, nope.
12,000 from Steve. Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's super expensive, but possibly Nettie is closest at the moment.
Suzanne Morgan says, Klein Constantia van der Constance. Well, I'd love to think that. I used to work at Klein Constantia, Suzanne, once upon a time. It's not that, although that is expensive. Shall we tell them?
Let's leave the guesses coming whilst we just talk a little bit further, because we've talked about fortified, we've talked about late harvest. Now, there is a more known to be Italian style of dessert wine or sweeter wine. And the method is called passito, or it's also known as straw wine in Austria specifically. Now, these are grapes that are picked when they're ripe, not overripe, not rot, just picked when they're ripe, and then they're dried on straw, as the straw wine would suggest, or even hung from the rafters so that there's air circulating, so that they don't get any mold or rot.
Yeah.
It's kind of raisin wine in a way, isn't it? So they wait for the grapes to dry out and become nearly raisiny. So there's real concentration. Yeah. Then the wine is made.
But it's always the same thing though with these wines, that they need the concentration of sugar in the original grape. Otherwise they can't really move on.
So they have to be ripe. They have to be a good quality fruit to start with, which is why these wines are really quite expensive, because they're evaporating off a lot of the volume in the liquid. Yeah. So what you're producing is a half or less of the volume you would get.
Yeah, I mean it's minuscule.
It's a super expensive way to produce it. So of these passito style wines, one which you might have heard of is Vinsanto.
Yeah, I've heard of Vinsanto.
So Vinsanto can come from a few different areas, but you can have Vinsanto del Chianti, for example, which is using the Chianti grapes, but producing this sweet dessert wine. Lovely. Yeah. We've tasted a few recently. One of them from one of our Amarone producers, Vini Fabiano. We've tasted their Ricciotto. Sorry, Vinsanto. We're talking about. The other is Ricciotto. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself.
There's an awful lot of them.
The other is Ricciotto. So Vinsanto is your sort of Chianti, Tuscany region. Ricciotto della Valpolicella is another one that you've probably heard of, which is Valpolicella. So that is more down your Amarone route. Yeah. And it's said that when one of the producers was producing his Ricciotto, so what they do is they get dry their grapes to produce almost raisins, start fermenting their wine. Once it gets to 14%, they chill it, which stops the fermentation, right? So sort of freezes time and says, right, we only want 14% and we want to retain the sweetness. Now, one chappie, no name associated to him, kind of forgot to stop the fermentation, and his wine fermented through. So the yeast kept eating the sugar until it was dry. So until there was very little sugar left and it was classed as a dry wine. So what he had was a very, very rich,
very alcoholic,
strong, still red wine, which was the birth of Amarone.
Yeah, so Amarone was basically an error.
Yes, an error from producing dessert wine.
And now you can pay €100 for a bottle of Amarone if you want to.
Easily, yeah. And a fantastic wine it is too, because if you like your big, rich, deep red wines.
And it still has that slight raisiness to it as well, Amarone, because it harks back to the raisins or the grapes that are dried, not on the vine on this occasion, but off the vine until they're raisins. So it's all the concentration of the grape. Yeah, so always associated with kind of big pruny flavors and that sort of thing. Yeah.
So back to the cost of the world's most expensive Ritz-selling dessert wine.
I don't think anybody's close, actually.
There's a few close guesses, but basically it was £75,000 a bottle. Yeah.
So I think actually Nettie did say 85,000, which is a very, very good guess. I mean, well done, you.
It's massive. And the producer was
Chateau d'Yquem, which I think Steve Ronconcho got. So well done, Steve.
And where are they from?
Bordeaux.
Chateau d'Yquem.
So Chateau d'Yquem, which is D''YQUEM, is probably, well, it is the world's most renowned dessert wines, if you like. And who knows what it's made from? Jude, you know what it's made from? The grapes.
Well, so this is
unusual.
This is produced in Bordeaux.
Yeah.
So, I don't know the wine specifically, but I'm assuming then, so you're looking at a Sauterne dessert wine. So it's Semillon,
yes,
Sauvignon.
And that's it. It's basically all the wines of the Sauterne region are produced using Semillon grapes and Sauvignon grapes. So all you Sauvignon Blanc lovers out there, and you know Sauvignon Blanc is a dry wine, Sauterne, the sweetest wines in the world, is made using 50% Sauvignon, 50% Semillon. Well, in different levels, in actual fact. Mm-hmm. Can I tell my little anecdote about Château d'Yquem?
Yeah, whilst I'm eating some cheese. Sorry.
Okay, so Château d'Yquem. Anybody who goes down to Bordeaux, go and have a look. You're not allowed in. It's by appointment only, and even then, it's incredibly difficult to get an appointment. And what was I going to say about Château d'Yquem?
When you were working...
but it's a beautiful, beautiful medieval chateau. It's stunning. Absolutely stunning, really oldie worldy. Like, anybody know that film Name of the Rose? It's kind of that sort of like monkey medieval. It's really, really fascinating, and it is worth a visit to the little village of Sauterne. But way back in the day, when I used to run the Conran wine departments, and we used to buy some colossally expensive wines at auction, and there was one time when the big boss, Terence Conran, told me that I had to go and buy some Sauterne, some Château d'Yquem for one of his new restaurants that was open. I think it was Quaglino's, I can't remember. And we got this bottle in auction, and it was a bottle of Château d'Yquem, 1928. And it cost something like, I can't remember, something like £18,000.
And this was a while ago, right?
This is a long time ago. This is back in the 90s, late 90s.
It was worth a lot more money then.
I'd gone with my mate, the credit controller, and I said, "Come on, Tony." He said, he was my...
He can't have been happy.
He was
about
my
this
heavy.
purchase,
He was
surely.
my heavy, and we walked back, and this bottle eventually arrived from Sotheby's, I think it was, and it arrived on a, Deliveroo. What's it? On a scooter. And we thought, oh my God, what are we going to do with this? Here's this £20,000 bottle of wine.
And why did he want it in the first place?
Because we were opening a new restaurant, and he wanted it.
Symbol.
Just like the Ritz has got a Château d'Yquem, he wanted Château d'Yquem on the Quaglino's wine list. And Tony kept it under his desk as a foot stand for a good couple of months, until we decided, oh my God, we really need to do something with this bottle. So we put it in a bank bond, in a bank, and sort of let them look after it for a while. But it was not a good way of looking after a £20,000 bottle of wine.
I mean, it's just almost a commodity at that price point. But even
it did sell. It went on the list at £28,000.
Did it really?
Yeah, and it did. I think it did sell.
Wow.
Yeah.
So if someone bought it there and then at the restaurant, did you have to send your Deliveroo down to the bank to get it out of the safe?
Do you know what? I think I'd left by then.
Okay.
I think I'd left the business before it actually sold. I don't know. That's a really interesting
it's a really.
I don't know. Maybe I can find out.
It's not a very efficient way of serving wine if you have to send someone down the bank to get it out.
I think probably somebody would have asked for it ahead of it. But here's the thing. Here's the thing about these sweet wines, and the reason why we sort of chose these glasses. And I just want to also say that the Hannibal Brown clan got together in January, and for lunch, and we had poached pears as our pudding. And we gave everybody the tiniest little tot of this late harvest Riesling with poached pears, and it was absolutely perfect. And I think the thing about these is, because Jude said, they don't really go off. This will sit in your fridge for weeks, probably months, if you really can hold back. But you only really need a little tot for it to do the job. And I think maybe people are put off by, overindulgence on sweet wines, because too much of it is like, oh my God, you can't move.
They're not full glass jobbies.
Just a little tot goes so far, and I definitely recommend it with poached pears. So give it a go.
So we've talked about Château d'Yquem, but we've not really talked about Sauterne. And I think when you mentioned dessert wine, probably the number one that comes to people's minds from a classic perspective is Sauterne. Now, Sauterne is a place. as with all these wines, as with your Sancerres and your Chablis and your Châteauneuf du Pape, Sauternes is a village, right? In the Bordeaux region. Finn has got a bit of a sweet tooth and he's got his eyes on this little sweetie we've got over here.
We're going for a sweetie now and it goes very
nicely. So Sauternes is an example of, like we said, the kind of noble late harvest style of wines, along with another wine, which is Hungary. Maybe we'll put this as a starter for 20. Hungary is very well known for a dessert wine. What is the name? This is a wine
equally world renowned.
Very, way up there, price wise as well as status wise in the dessert wine world. And this is another sort of late harvest noble rot kind of production method. It's not fortified and it's not the passito sort of raisin wine that we talked about from the Italians. Does anybody know what it's called? Hungarian dessert wine, very, very famous. So that is another good example. You're anything with a late harvest Chenin Blanc is also very well known. And they all produce quite a fresh light style. Your raisin style, your passitos are much richer. And then when you're looking at your kind of food pairing-y end of the scale, I mean, do people drink dessert wines with dessert? Not as often as they should do, but I urge you, when you have your next dinner party, if it ever happens, or at least with 6 people socially distanced spread around the house, get a dessert wine out with whatever you're having for dinner. Because here's some classic examples. So if you're down the kind of custardy vanilla end of your pudding scale, then you're looking at your late harvests. Has anyone heard of Spumante d'Asti? That's what it's called, isn't it?
Yeah.
I feel like I've got it wrong now.
I think you have.
Kind of
Asti Spumante.
It's a sparkling sweet wine.
But
again,
it's light, very light,
and good with your custardy, vanilla-y types of food. Now, another category you'd think of maybe more fruity, spicy type of desserts. They would be more down your Sauterne, Gewürztraminer. So Gewürztraminer's got a bit more of a tropical character,
a bit more aromatic.
So with the spices, it works with the spices. And then you go down your caramelly, rich, chocolatey route. And there's where you get wines such as Banyuls,
which is dark, deep, made from the southwest corner of France, made from Grenache.
Grenache grape. We listed Banyuls actually, and it really is stunning. It's fortified, red, like a light young ruby port, and really delicious if you've got a sort of chocolatey dessert. Again, in small measures.
Interesting to say, in actual fact, a good few years ago, we actually held a chocolate and wine comparison evening. Pairing evening. And we worked with a chocolate company who created various different chocolates with various different levels of cacao in it, I should say. And we paired certain wines with those different chocolates. And without a doubt, the most overwhelming successful pairing was the Banyuls with chocolate, with a deep with the dark chocolate. I would actually say, almost go as far to say, actually, none of the others really worked. But the Banyuls was an absolute winner. And I know a few people there that evening actually got it as well. They saw it as well.
There are some big fruity, dry table wines that you can pair with chocolate. With the darker chocolates, which are almost a bit more savoury. Amarone, also big rich Grenaches, which Banyuls is made of, but dry Grenache.
But this is not going to work. This is not going to work with chocolate because, in actual fact, although first impressions and people are probably only sitting with one bottle, first impressions it is, intensely sweet. It is actually quite light compared to what we're talking about, the Banyuls or the Topak from Campbell's, which is also on the website. These are and it's the same principle as we always talk about with food and wine pairings, that the more intense the pudding, the more intense the sweet wine has to be. And similarly, like the poached pears, that's a nice light, easygoing, the lighter the wine. So these are just simple principles to follow when you're putting your little tipple together.
But it has to be said, don't let your lovely, delicious pudding or dessert ruin the wine you're drinking. Just change the wine for a bit and then you can go back to it after.
Yes.
We've had a few correct answers.
Yes.
I think Steve and Luke both said Tokai.
Well done.
Absolutely
well done.
right. Yes, so Tokai, confusing because Tokai is the name of the wine. Tokai is also the name of the place.
Different spellings.
Different spellings. Tokai, the wine has got an I on the end, and actually is Tokaji. The place is Tokaj, just to keep it really, really confusing. And the grape is neither. The grape is made from the ferment grape. So you do get dry ferment wines. Actually, I think we still list one. Really, really interesting, lovely wines. I mean, some Hungarian wines are really fantastic. We don't do a lot of the still wines because they do creep up the price point again.
But again, it's the same thing. It's just like Sauterne, made from Semillon and Sauvignon. If you take the grapes off the vines when they're ripe, but they haven't botrytized or they haven't shriveled to raisins, they're going to produce dry wines. Same with ferment, same with Riesling, same with anything.
Any grape,
but leave these grapes on the vine for any length of time, and this is what you end up with. And but they are generally expensive because they're producing less.
Indeed, yeah. So you haven't got the water content.
Yeah.
So you're paying for just the pure juice.
So should we touch a little bit on sparkling as well? Because you get different levels of sparkling. And bear in mind, I think I've said this before, and you probably all know this, but carbon dioxide reduces the sensation of sweetness. So sparkling wines tend to have a more sweetness in them to sort of combat that dryness. And I'll give you an example. Coca-Cola, if you drink it nice and fresh out the fridge when it's still sort of intensely sort of carbonated, it's perfect. But let it go flat and go back to it, it's sweet as hell. That's the difference. That's the acid test. But so certain sparkling wines go well with certain flavors. So I'll go back to my poached pears. The light one would go best with Asti Spumante, which is relatively low alcohol, relatively low carbonation, but has got a little bit of residual sweetness to it. That goes nicely.
Yeah, which is needed, yeah.
Champagne. Well, they all say champagne goes well with strawberries. I have a bit of a problem with champagne and strawberries.
If it's a sweeter champagne, I can see it. But also champagne and truffles, right?
Truffles.
As in chocolate truffles, not tartuffi, not mushroomy truffles. You often see these gift boxes with champagne and truffles in. And again, the champagne has to be quite sweet and the chocolate has to be quite light, I think, for that to work.
Yeah.
You better, if it's going to be a dark chocolate truffle, you're better with your red grape dessert wine. So your Banyuls or fortified.
Or a sweet or a demi-sec champagne.
Yes, if it's got good
sec or demi-sec champagne
body to it. Yeah, not a dry champagne because that is a car crash.
Yeah. So the key is it's just sugar with sugar. That's all it is, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's the right combination. But sugar with sugar. Let's talk about cheese.
Let's talk about cheese. Yes.
So we've definitely suggested goat's cheese with this particular wine. I'll be really interested to know what people think. Actually, do they like it with the cheese or before the cheese? Or actually with, do they find it works better with something sweet? Because it should work with both, but, it's horses for courses and all that.
Yeah.
But a really classic example of your sweet/dessert wine and cheese combination is Port and Stilton.
Yeah.
Match made in heaven. Or is it just something that history has dictated should go together and we buy because it's Christmas and we just do it? I don't know. I think it does go. I think it does go because the saltiness, as you mentioned, the saltiness of the cheese, there's no cheese in there, Finn. The saltiness of the cheese
balances the acidity.
Yeah, and the sweetness gives it a nice lift.
Yeah.
When you're looking at sherries, we love sherry. We don't list a sherry at the moment. We're going to because we've tasted a lot of sherries in the last few years and it's not very fashionable, but
that's the problem. Fantastic. That's the problem. Nobody drinks sherry, unfortunately.
Yes, tell us, thumb up or thumb down. Do you like sherry? Dry sherries, generally more down your almonds, have with your nuts. The sweeter end of the scale is more for your dessert wine, but certainly it has to be said that the sort of medium dry sherries, brilliant with which are Spanish. brilliant with Manchego cheese. So again, that kind of saltiness of the cheese. When you're going down the Madeira route of fortified wines, you need to go a bit more nutty. So really good with your kind of Gruyères or even Comté. So a bit of nuttiness about the cheese. Sauterne has got the acidity, not as much acidity as the Riesling. And
well, the Bordelais would always say drink Sauterne with foie gras.
There you go. Well,
foie gras possibly in a poached pear reduction. That's what they would do.
Is that right?
Foie gras in a poached pear reduction and a little tot of Sauterne. And remember, again, the French in the Sauterne region, they're literally only drinking a tiny little tot like this because that's all you need because it's so intense.
But from a cheese front, you'd go pungent.
Yeah.
So think of your stinky cheese. I'm going to say
Roquefort.
Époisse
or Roquefort.
Vacherin.
Ooh.
You know those ones which, well, if Wayne was listening, Wayne is my brother-in-law who's South African, and I remember one Christmas bringing an Époisse to the table and putting the teaspoon in the middle of it, and he was sort of physically retching on the other side of the table. One of those with a glass of Sauterne would be absolutely delicious.
Yeah. Okay, look, we've got a love sherry from Jane Kinghorn. That's a thumbs up for sherry. Excellent. Glad to hear it. Is it an Amontillado or is it a PX? But listen, I'm going to stop you talking about cheese because on Thursday evening, we have wine and cheese. Yes, please.
That's true.
And also, just to say that this is one type of Riesling, but on Thursday evening, we're going to have another type of Riesling, which is called the real Mccoy dry Riesling from the Jordan estate in South Africa. And drum roll, we have Gary and Kathy Jordan, owners of the Jordan estate, joining us. Indeed. I don't know how it's going to work, but they are joining us on the settee here with the dog.
No, we have to work the technology for the dial-in. So we hope it will work.
But it's interesting because because we asked them for a recommendation of the cheese that goes with that Riesling, and this is a dry Riesling, and they've also said a South African blue cheese.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So we will pop on the website tomorrow the cheeses we recommend to get in to pair with the Riesling, and we're also going to be tasting our lovely, lovely Reserva Rioja 2015, which is undoubtedly our go-to Rioja and has been for the last 8 years.
So I know it's the middle of the summer, but questions come up, in actual fact, about Christmas pudding, and absolutely bang on, because again, we would not recommend this wine with Christmas pudding because it's just too light, it would fall apart. But what we would recommend is, and you go on the website and have a look, Campbell's Topak. You can basically pour it over your vanilla ice cream and drink it with your mince pies or Christmas pudding. It's absolutely phenomenal. It's about 18% alcohol. So again, go easy. It will sit in the fridge for 6 months. So even if you want to go and buy a bottle tomorrow, which of course you do, have a little tot, wait for Christmas, it'll still be bang on. Excuse me, dog, stop it. So Campbell's Topak with Christmas pud, late harvest Riesling with goat's cheese or poached pears or something nice and light and fresh. Always drink these super chilled. Do not try and drink them at room temperature because they're going to be hard going. It's like drinking warm Coca-Cola again.
The sweetness gets sweeter.
Anything else?
I just want to go back. So we've got. Thank you very much, obviously, for joining us this evening for Sweetie Sunday. It's a sunny summer's day and a strange time.
It does seem all wrong. It does seem all wrong, but we had to do it.
Yeah, we had to do it, and it's interesting. Way there, Finn. We're nearly done. So Thursday is wine and cheese. Yes, please.
Yep. Done that.
Sunday.
Come here.
I'm getting a good
Sunday
kissing.
Go, Jude.
Sunday, I believe, is all about Bordeaux.
Back to basics, Bordeaux.
Next Sunday, we're going to be tasting our Cadet du Claymore, which is a new...
My wine of the moment.
Cam's wine of the moment, and is our kind of new entry-level, if you like, Bordeaux wine. It's fantastic. It's £15 a bottle and really great.
Smooth as a big bottom. Love
You'll
it.
enjoy a glass of that, but it's really interesting to learn a bit more about this real classic wine region that is a mystery to most of us. So tune in on Sunday for that. And then the following Thursday, we're going back to our house wines.
Yeah.
So we're going right back round, and we've got our 2 fabulous Spanish house wines that are just.
Can I say
delish.
something as well? Can I say something as well? Something really exciting
Go on,
tomorrow.
go on.
Everybody, go on the website tomorrow afternoon. There's going to be something fabulous on it. You're going to love it. You're
Do
going
I
to
have to put it on
absolutely
there?
love
Do
it.
I know about this?
Yes, you do. You're going to absolutely love it. And it is to do with the sunshine and, dare I say, something pink.
Oh, yes. A bit of a pink revelation.
Yeah.
So, heat wave coming this week.
Yeah.
Stay hydrated. Order your rosé. Very important. We can't have anybody getting dehydrated in these hot times. It's good to see some positive shouts for sherry. We might well have a little look at pulling a few in, even if just for temporarily. So you can have them with your almonds as your aperitivo before dinner.
Yeah.
And
do join us on Thursday. Gary Jordan, Kathy Jordan are waiting to hear your questions.
Indeed, yeah. Think about whatever you might want to ask. I'll let you know what the cheeses are tomorrow, and also there's plenty of time to order the wines if you don't have them yet.
Right.
So just give us a shout, hop on the website.
Okay, Finn's saying bye.
Yeah, so thank you all for joining us.
Bye.
Sweetie Sunday. It's naughty.
Cheers, everybody.
It's naughty but nice.
Now pop it back in the fridge and wait till next Sunday. Drink the rest next Sunday. That's what I say.
I don't know. We'll grab another bit of cheese and have another glass.
Cheers.
All right, cheers, everyone. Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye.
Bye.